Hello, and welcome to Piano Adventures Accelerated Lesson Book 1. Today we'll be on page 32 and 33, going over Eine Kleine Nachtmusik by Mozart. We'll start off going through our preparation for sight reading, as by this point we have enough notes we can start actually having some tips for sight reading to make the sight reading go smoother, to make you feel more confident and get more information off the page as we're starting to see more notes and more symbols in our music. Obviously, there's a lot. We still do the sight reading. One of the biggest things that holds people back from progress is not attempting the sight reading before they try to study the song. Before we take our sight reading, let's start by first doing our line breaks, identifying the first note of the right hand and left hand for each line of our music. We start off with our landmarks at this point, our middle C, treble G, and bass F. On our very first line, we'll notice our first note of the right hand is the middle C. It's one of our memorization notes, easy enough. In our left hand, though, this note is below the middle C, but it is above the left hand's bass F, and it's a space note, so it'd be the step above the F, our G, with our 3 on the G. When I have my 1 on C, left hand 3 on G, we'll notice the thumbs become neighbors on this song, not sharing. We go to line 2, starting at measure 5. Now the right hand's higher than the middle C, but lower than the treble G, on a space note. So it must either be the D or the F, and it's a step below the G, so that would be the F. In our left hand, we'll notice this note is no longer the G, it is higher. It's still lower than our C, higher than our G. It has to either be the B or the A. Seeing as it's the space note, we can either say that this is a step below the C, or a skip higher, a third higher than the opening G of the song. We go to our next line, line 3 at measure 9. Right hand still has a middle C. And once again, the left hand has a B. Those are notes we now can identify much faster by sight. We go to the next line, measure 13. This note we haven't seen yet in the right hand. It's higher than the middle C, lower than the G, and it's a space note. And it's a step above the C, our D. We look at our left hand, yep, and that is another B. Finally, we go to our final line, starting at measure 17. And we should recognize these notes very quickly as middle C and the G. That is a step above the bass F, notes that we've already marked in our music. This is a great way to replace flashcards in our note review. Now before we sight read, we'll look for time signature. This song will have 4 beats per measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The tempo says with energy. So it's going to be a little on the faster side. When you're sight reading, feel free to take everything moderate to moderately slow to give yourself the time to take in information. You can look through to see, are there any special symbols, text, signs to be on the lookout for you? Now when you're ready, we'll sight read. I highly suggest pausing the video here, give yourself a chance to sight read, and resume once you've read through this song. Now we'll go on to our active listening. At the beginning of the song, we see something that's come up quite a few times. We have the dynamic forte, and we have C's that are accented and C's that are not accented. These being on the thumb are really important. This is usually played in the right hand, but I'm going to play it in the left hand for an easier demonstration. For the accent, we want to lift the arm up until the fingertip is just on the key, and then we can drop the weight in. The thing with the thumb is, though, because the thumb's final joint is connected right next to the wrist, people have a tendency to play the thumb as if it's always through the arm, like an accent. We make sure to understand this side tip of thumb, and we want to be using a light side tip of thumb, really just moving the thumb's joint here and not having to move the entire arm on the non-accented C's. The accents. And now the normal C's. I can still play this C very loudly with my thumb. And it has a much different sound than when it's accented. This is why people tend to feel like they're hammering their thumbs on the piano, is because they're actually using the weight of their arm rather than simply the weight of the finger moving from the joint down here next to the wrist. Arm, 2, 3, finger, arm, 2, 3, finger, 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 2, 3. Now we will also see the new symbol, the quarter rest, which is one beat of silence. It does not mean to pause. It doesn't mean that it's not a beat. It is still one beat of what we can call negative harmony. If a rough definition of harmony is the sound of sounds working together, negative harmony is the sounds of no sound working against our music, which means when we see a quarter rest, we want to make sure that we are hearing silence come out of the instrument rather than feeling a pause, or rather than feeling like a do nothing. Because some people will say to go shh, but then your ears can't hear the silence. Or some people will clap, but then you can't hear the silence. Especially in a lot of classical era music, namely Mozart, Beethoven, and Haydn, the use of negative harmony is so important to getting this music to be stylistically correct. So at the beginning, I'll take from the beginning to 9 and really make sure we listen for this negative harmony on the 2 quarter notes. Now if we were to be lazy and hold these through, notice how much different it sounds. And it comes off just a little bit less interesting. There's not these moments of, what's going to happen? And we want to have our quarter rests, especially when it's no note being played in either hand, to be an important moment of absolute silence from the instrument. This song has plenty of small groupings of slurs on page 2 that are really interesting. These small groupings of slurs are another quality of the classical period that Mozart came from that is really common in the real music as well. In measure 10, I see a 3-note slur grouping. I can go down on the E even though it's on beat 2. So I'm not going to go as heavy onto beat 2, but I will go down, and then the next tunes will be going up, up, and now on this next 2-note slur, I have a 2-note slur from right hand to left hand, going down in my right hand and up in my left hand. People might say, but how do I make a sound going up on the piano? We've actually done this many times, but people think they always need to drop in beforehand. Instead, I can lift up on the piano and think about my thumb like the tab on a can of soda. As my arm goes up, it pivots forward and is going to apply pressure downward to the key. This is the sound of our upward arm energy. Above, I'll include a link to a video that goes much more in detail on our use of arm weight on the piano as a fundamental piano technique. Down, up, down, up. Just like if one hand was doing it, we can create the sound across 2 hands. A little bit trickier technique than using one hand for it. Down, up, down, up. Rather than just on the keys. Instead, we get a bit more color and we get a bit more difference in the sound of the notes that leads to our sound being more interesting, having more color and pronunciation to the sound. Once you feel like you're comfortable with this song, a great tool online are the play-along tracks, getting used to not only playing music, but playing it in time and playing with what you hear around you, whether you want to play collaboratively with friends or eventually as a teacher to accompany your students. This is a great tool for getting used to how to play with what you hear around you. We'll also see the teacher duet part below. We can take this together. I'll put the metronome at 100. 1, 2, ready. Happy practicing.